Hello everyone, welcome to RCD ShareNet. I'm Ella Huang. Today I'm going to talk about provincial services and federal services for people with disabilities. Previously, I already talked about services for children with special needs. If you're interested in review those, you can go back to the previous video to look at that. And in that video, I also talk about the different levels, the 3-tier level of the Canadian government, as well as some of the service providers for that. So I'm not going to repeat that again here. So we'll just straight go into the provincial services for persons with disabilities. I want to tell you first is the different ministries or departments that are providing such services. Of course, there are a lot of services provided to Canadian citizens. Today, we're only focusing on persons with disabilities. The more prominent one is the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, so that is the current name they go by. And mainly they are looking after the employment assistance for people with disabilities. So we use the acronym PWD for people with disabilities. If you hear me use that acronym, you know what I'm talking about. This Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, mainly they're looking after the financial and the health support for people with disabilities. The other department I want to talk about is Community Living BC. We usually just call it CLBC. CLBC is not strictly a conventional government department. It is actually a crown corporation, and it is set up to look after adults with developmental disabilities. From the beginning, they also add on to a few other categories, such as the individuals who have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or who also have significant difficulty doing things on their own. So that is the coverage is pretty broad. And they include services like they program residential options and support respite, community participation, developmental disability, mental health services, and a few others. And of course, when it comes to people with disabilities, we're also talking about some medical conditions. So the Ministry of Health also played important parts here. They would provide home and community care, mental health services, medical services, and therapies, etc. And also for young people or even for older people, they may want to pursue their education. So the Ministry of Advanced Education is also included. They do adult special education that would include grants and scholarships, post-secondary communication access services, and mainly at BCIT, and a program for institutional loan of assistive technology, that is for people who require different accommodation on the computer equipments and so on. Now let us focus more on the financial aid for people with disabilities. So we are on the PWD benefits slide here. For that is when people coming to the age of 18, they are eligible to receiving, we call it a PWD benefits, or more formally, officially, it is known as the Person with Disabilities Designation. So PWD designation, that is what you apply for to have this designation. And with this designation, you are entitled to receive an array of benefits, including a bus pass program. So it may not be exactly to say it includes a bus pass program, because you can opt in and opt out, and they do deduct a certain amount of money from your benefits in order to cover the bus pass. So if someone opts not to take the bus pass, they can have the $52 a month to add to their benefits, or else they can use the $52 a month to buy a bus pass. And then they also have extended health cares, extended health benefits that would cover some equipments that has to be on the approved list, some prescription drugs, and also if it is not on the list, then they probably can apply for a special exemption to get the coverage for the medications. And also that would be other therapies such as physiotherapy, Now I know that they also include acupuncture and things like that. So if you check the list, then you know what you are entitled to. However, this is not an unlimited amount involved, so it is always limitation to that. Then is a special transportation subsidy for those who cannot take the public transit. So they have to travel maybe on a vehicle. Then they can have this subsidy they applied. This subsidy, I believe, you need to apply annually. And they also have a specialized employment support program. So for people with disabilities, they are on disability benefits, but they want to work. So there are certain allowance to encourage people to work actually. So you are allowed to earn up to a certain level of income that won't affect your benefits. And they calculate on an annual basis. They call it the annualization. So you can earn monthly. Now I believe the exemption amount is at $12,000. So for every month you can earn up to $1,000 without affecting your benefits. However, that is a very kind of strict reporting that you have to follow. So when it comes to the actual amount of money, you have not heard me mention that because that is a little bit tricky. It depends on the person's condition and their family situation, that it would determine how much money the individual will receive. So if you're on the disability assistance, and then you receive on a monthly basis a certain amount. It depends on whether you are single or married, and whether your spouse is having a disability or on benefits, or whether you have any dependent children. So that would affect that. And also during this time with COVID-19, the government has a little bit of subsidy additional to the monthly assistance. So we are all aware that they have included for the until March 2021, that is additional $150 added to the amount you normally receive monthly. It was a bit higher before, and unless they announce otherwise, know that additional amount will finish end of March. Okay, now we have talked a little bit about the benefits. Then how do you apply for it? What is the eligibility criteria? So we have a slide to show that, and saying number one is the person has to be over 18 years of age and have a permanent disability. So a permanent disability is very important definition there. So what is defined as permanent? Of course, like this stay with the person for a long time. In fact, they look at it as over a period of 12 months. And whether it will last for longer time as well. And also, when they define permanent, they also look at, is that any medication or treatment that can be used to counter the effect of the condition, the medical condition, if that is one that might not be defined as permanent. And also, the disability will render the person having some challenges or barriers in performing daily living activities. So this is also important as well. I'm not saying, like medical condition will not affect your daily activities. However, some will affect a little bit more. So they will look into this one, see whether, like the daily living activities are severely affected. And then the last but not the least, it's important, is it is income and asset sensitive. So what does it mean by that? That means they do look at how much money you have in the bank, what kind of assets you have, such as investment, RRSP, insurance policy. They do look at that. So they will look at, see, like whether there's a certain amount, like they allowed you to have. That is the basic asset you're allowed. Other than this, they also look at the income. So, earlier I mentioned they actually encourage people with disabilities to work even while they are receiving benefits. So they allow a certain level of income that you can earn. Nonetheless, if the income level is higher, that may affect your eligibility to receive the benefits. And they are not only looking at the individual's income, they also look at the whole household income. That means they also look at if you're married and looking at the income your spouse is making. So that would sometimes affect the eligibility of the individual getting the benefits. We do generally, the general asset exemption limit is $100,000. So if you have $100,000, then less than that, you're still eligible to apply for the disability benefits. So again, we are looking at the household asset as well, so including the individual's asset and the spouse asset as well. And then for this one, there are certain things that are exempted from it. For instance, the house you're living in, if you own your own home, that is okay, the motor vehicle. And then the cash on hand, less than $100,000. And also some of the government benefits is also accepted, such as the Registered Disability Savings Plan, so, or the asset being held in a qualified trust, so they're exempted as well. So there are different situations. It is very difficult just to generalize and say, you get it or you don't get it. So a lot of other factors are in play here. And the application process is also quite tricky as well. So now, if you want to apply for the PWD benefits, the first step is actually everyone has to go online, on an online portal called MySelf-Serve. Then you set up an account there. The process is not difficult, but you do need some different pieces of ID and to enable you to register, to identify that you're actually you, and then you're not talking about another person with the same name. So you do need to have your social insurance number, your care card number sometimes, and other the BCID card if you have one, or other pieces of identification they consider legitimate for that. So when you apply for that is when you log onto the MySelf-Serve portal, and then it's actually the same portal people would use to apply for income assistance as well as disability benefits. So in the first part, they ask a lot of questions that would be the same. So because the bottom line is they also want to assess whether the individual is eligible for income assistance. However, this is not a must, because people applying for income assistance, they don't have the asset exemption we mentioned earlier. So here is when you apply, then you indicate that you have a disability and that is your intention to apply for the PWD designation, and then they will have a different category for you to apply on. However, that is the same portal that we are using. So when you look at that, some people may think, I want to apply for disability benefits. So is it the right approach? In fact, it is. So firstly is you apply for the income assistance, and then you apply for the disability benefits, which they assess you, and then if they approve you, then the first step is they will approve you for the income assistance. So you don't need to wait for a long time. They do have their guideline to return phone calls, to process your application quite a speedy manner. And after that, you're eligible, then you will start receiving the income assistance. Then the second step is to apply for the designation of person with disabilities, and they will give you an application form to fill out. And this application form is quite tricky because it is a long form, and then there are 3 parts, and then one part you fill up by the applicant, and then 2 parts are filled up by the family doctor or the healthcare professionals. So you need to have the support of them in order to have a successful application. Okay, that is pretty much for the applying for the disability benefits in the province of BC. So we want to look at other provincial services as well, other than just the disability benefits. So a lot of the other services for people with disabilities is, number one is the Consumers Taxation Branch. That is where we report our tax. So when we report tax, then we actually have 2 levels, the federal and the provincial. So this one I'm talking about the provincial services. So I start with the provincial services first. So they have a few actually, if you on the slide, you can see that the motor fuel tax refund. So what is that? Like if you have a qualifying disability, and then you actually can have some refund on the tax you pay on the fuel for your car. So if you're riding using a car, then you may be able to apply for that. The amount is refund is $500 each calendar year. So it is not on the money you spend on your gas, but on the tax. It's a tax rebate on the money you spend on your gas. And the process is not very straightforward, you need to apply so that you're eligible to make a claim, and after that you make the claim on a yearly basis. So you need to register for that. Some people, they're not driving a car, they don't buy any gas, they are not looking at that. Sometimes it is still worthwhile to do it because that is useful, if you're riding in a car, say you're one of with your family members, and then actually that will give a discount on the insurance plan that the vehicle is taking on. So I will talk about that later. The other is and that is one more thing, is if you're driving an electrical vehicle, then you're not eligible to apply for the fuel tax rebate. So that is sometimes, people, you get to be a little bit thinking about the environment, but actually you don't get subsidy to support you to do that. It's a bit, ironic, I have to say. Okay, then there's the homeowners grant for people with disabilities. So that is additional grant on the tax that you're paying on that's the property tax you pay on your principal residence, then you can get additional discount on that. Or the property tax deferment, so you can apply for deferment of paying all your property tax. That's a low interest program. You still need to repay your property tax down the road, but not immediately. So sometimes it is helpful if you don't have a lot of reserve of cash, and it will help that. And then there are also PST, exemption on equipment and devices. If you are buying medical equipments like wheelchairs and a bit other equipments, then you can claim back on you can have a break on the TST, so you don't need to pay the PST. So that is quite significant depending on what you're buying. And tax reduction for vehicle modification. So people say, for instance, using a wheelchair, when they buy a vehicle, they would convert it into hand control. In that case, or, in order for the wheelchair to get inside the vehicle, that may be a ramp that built in. So we call it the vehicle modification. And then there's a tax reduction for doing all these conversions. So don't worry if I talk a lot and then you may not be able to remember that. You can listen again, or you can refer to some of the web links I've included in the description down there. So, if you want to find out a bit more information about that, feel free to go and click on the link and then see what they are. And then, that would be helpful to ascertain whether you're eligible or not. Okay, we continue with other provincial services. So the next slide. And we said, just to mention earlier, is the ICBC Auto Plan Insurance Disability Discount. So for this one, you need to apply for the fuel tax refund confirmation first. Because, you don't just go to ICBC brokers and when you get your insurance for the vehicle and then get that. So they will ask for the confirmation of the fuel tax rebate. Then with that number, you can apply, you can get a discount on the insurance. So it's not only, you don't need to be the vehicle owner. So if you're riding in the vehicle that belongs to the family member, that is still eligible to apply for that. So how much will you get? You most likely get a 25% discount on your basic auto plan. So that is pretty good, if you're using that. Then the other kind of services benefits is from the BC Ferry. So people with disabilities will get a discounted fare. So it is not very straightforward. Just go and say, that is a process. You need to apply for the accessibility fare identification card first. So after you have done that, then you will get a discount when you ride a ferry. So not only for the card holder, but also for the attendant, if that is the individual needs attendant to travel along. So that would also help with to receive the discount as well. And from the public transit perspective, there's the HandyDart services. So HandyDart is it's like a bus, but it is a door-to-door service. So the bus come to the door, pick you up, and take you to the destination and drop you off at the door. However, it is not a taxi service, so you need to book. And now you can actually book 7 days in advance, and then or you can go by subscription. By subscription means, someone say taking HandyDart to work, and they can have a subscription, so you don't need to book every time. Then it will be a continuous service throughout until you stop the subscription. Other than the HandyDart, there's also the HandyPass and the Taxi Saver. So HandyPass, some people they don't want to take. They can still take the public transit like the bus or SkyTrain, but they do need some accommodation taking the public transit, such as maybe sitting at the priority seats, maybe have the bus lower the ramp for them to get on. So in that case, they would use a handy pass that would enable them to enjoy a concession fare and also to have an attendant to travel free of charge with them. And Taxi Saver is when you get the handy pass, then you can also apply for the Taxi Saver. So Taxi Saver is you can buy the booklet of tickets to ride the cab. That would enable you to enjoy 50% discount, because when you buy, you pay half of the ticket value. So now the booklet comes in a package of $80. They call it the Taxi Saver coupons. And so for the booklet costs $80, you only pay $40 for that. And then they can only purchase once every month. And the coupons come in the denominations of $1, $2, and $5. So you can split it up and use it for different rides. And the other one is the parking permit program for people with disabilities. So this is a special parking program when people are going out and then they're the driver of the vehicle, or they they're being ride in another person's car, but then they need to be dropped off close to the entrance. And then the vehicle can be parked at a place that is close to the entrance. So the permit enables the person to park at the designated accessible parking spots. So if you're interested to know more about this, you can actually check out the RCD website, because we are the issuer for Richmond residents to apply to obtain the parking permit, accessible parking permit. Okay, there's still some other provincial services for people with disabilities, so we can have this next slide out. Now we're coming to the housing, so that is the Provincial Housing Program for BC Housing. There are a lot of different housing available, different types. The cooperative housing, non-profit housing, rental assistance, and so on. So depending on because they all have different eligibility criteria, and there are different programs. Sometimes it depends on the audience they are serving. So if you need housing support, and then you can connect with a service provider and to get more information. And the other one is the Home Adaptation for Independence. And this is called a HAFI, we call it HAFI. It is also a BC housing program. This Home HAFI program is actually, they provide financial assistance for people, mainly is a grant to eligible low-income household to do some renovation at home so that they can continue to live at home. So that for people due to a medical condition, injury, or old age, that they need, say, certain modification at home to help them so that they can stay at home safely, and they can consider this grant. And then that is also the home renovation tax credit for people with disabilities. So kind of that concludes our provincial services, and I want to go on to the federal services for people with disabilities. So for the federal services is mainly they're kind of quite consolidated into the Service Canada Centre. And then so a lot of the benefits you can learn of and approach when you and learn of and then apply when you go to the center. So the first one is the Employment and Social Development Canada. They oversee the employment insurance. Then for people with disabilities, that might be the sickness benefits that we're talking about. If someone is unable to work due to illness, injury, or now quarantine, then you can apply for the EI, we say. And the other one is the opportunity funds for people with disabilities. That mainly is a program of the federal government. Then they provide some funding to assist people with disabilities to join the workforce. And they normally deliver this program through different service providers and organizations. So they do have a call for proposal out. So sometimes the different agencies will get the contract and then they will deliver the services. So you can actually go to Service Canada to get the information who's the service providers in your region. And then the Service Canada then is a single access for all, and they look after the CPP disability benefits. So this one is not for everyone. This is only for individuals who have made contribution of CPP. And then that because of a disability that prevent them from working at all, then they can apply for the CPP benefits. It depends on how long you have worked, how long you have contributed, and what is the amount of money you have contributed as well. So they all depends on that. So it is difficult to say how much money you will get because everyone is different. And the other one is the child disability benefits. If you have a child with a disability, then is a dependent, then you can get some tax break for that. And then is the federal excise gasoline tax refund. That is very similar to the provincial motor fuel tax rebate. So again, you need to apply for that. And this is for person with a permanent mobility impairment and cannot safely use the public transportation. Then they can so they need to ride in a vehicle when they go out. They can ask for a refund of part of the fuel tax on the gasoline on that buy. So this one then needs to be certified by a medical doctor in order to be eligible for the refund. Okay, continue with the federal benefits. We're coming to the end pretty soon. So for people with disabilities, that is the Registered Disability Savings Plan. So this is actually very similar to our RRSP, but not exactly the same. There are a lot of differences with that as well. Because this saving plans is to help people with disabilities when they get to age 60. So they may have high medical needs and therefore medical bills and different supports in life. So they might need a bit more money. So in that case, if they have no saving, and then how can they do that? So this is actually from the federal government providing bonds and grants for people who set up this account. So if you're interested, you can look up in the link underneath. But also when we talk about, we're planning to have a session talking just about the RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan, because it is quite complex. So, if you're interested, stay tuned for that. And then that is also the education funding for people with disabilities, their permanent disability grant, and there are also equipment that to support students with permanent disabilities to go through the education. And there are also education-related services and equipment that the people with disabilities can apply when they get taking. But the eligibility criteria is also pretty stringent, like they do look at how many, like the modules of, study you're taking up. So sometimes for part-time students, this may not be applicable. So you need to kind of look at that. So lastly, and we want to talk about other services from the federal government for people with disabilities, is the disability tax credit from the CRA, so the Canada Revenue Agency. So this also is quite a complex one. So it is a non-refundable tax credit that people claim on the income tax return. So if that you need to apply first. So the eligibility and everything, we are going to have a session talking about this as well. So you also stay tuned for that. If you have already got that, then that is, you can claim it on your income tax every year. If you're not, then you can apply for it. The good thing about this one is it is one of the rare one of the federal government is that there's no age limitation on that. So from the young infants to elderly, they all can apply for it. And lastly, but not the least, is the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. They have the Residential Rehabilitation Assistance Program for people with disabilities. But for this one, it seems only for the First Nation and the First Nation members can apply for that. But nonetheless, it is still, a benefit and support for people with disabilities. So that brings us to the end of my talk today. I hope you get some information. Like I said, check out the links underneath. And if you're interested to learn more in detail of any particular information I just mentioned, feel free to leave it in the comment, and we'll try to to prepare some of the information to share with you in future. Okay, thank you, and we'll be back soon. Bye-bye.